It's definitely not a conventional path for me. I think started feeling quite restricted by like the four walls of my backdrop. So I used to be a Canon user and I still love Canon. I think Canon is fantastic, much like Nikon and all the big players out there. But I switched to, I would definitely say to any photographer, any creative who's just starting out or anywhere in your journey really, is to always...
Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for having me today. How are you?
It's my pleasure. I think we waited a month for this.
Yes, sorry, that was my bad. Very busy.
No, not at all. That's really good. You know, for this podcast, my whole idea is to talk to photographers who are busy, who are successful, who are doing work, so that whoever listens actually gets some value out of it. So I'm really happy to hear that you're busy. I think that's great news for everybody.
Thanks.
So Linda, where are you right now?
I am in Cambridge. I'm in my flat, so I live in Cambridge at the moment. Obviously, I travel a lot, but I now have 2 weeks where I'm at home and I'm working. So yeah, I'm sitting in my office in Cambridge in the UK.
Excellent, excellent. And is that where you grew up, or have you been here for a while, or is this recent? Cambridge?
I didn't grow up in Cambridge. I grew up just north of London in a different town, but I worked in Cambridge for 5 years after I graduated from my master's. So I worked in a science and tech company before I became a photographer, and that's why I have a flat in Cambridge. And basically, when I quit my job to start traveling, I rented out my flat, and I came back here about a year ago and moved back in with my partner. So now we live here for the time being. Although I think at some point in the future we'd like to live somewhere sunnier and a bit warmer. So I don't know how long we'll be here for, but yeah, for now this is home.
I can't blame you. I have the same aspirations. I want to move to like Florida or somewhere. But
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. So that brings me. Well, actually, I could bring me to my first question, but before we spoke, I asked you to just think of 2 of your best tips. By any chance,
Yes.
are they in your mind? So this is a weird thing I do, but your second best tip, I love to ask people their second best tip right in the beginning of the podcast, and then the best one we do in the end. So,
Okay.
what's your second best tip for food photographers or photographers in general?
I've picked ones for photographers in general, and I think both of them, to be fair, are kind of things that I think are both really important. So I don't know which one's more kind of a better tip than the other. But one of them I would definitely say to any photographer, any creative who's just starting out or anywhere in your journey really, is to always keep creating and keep experimenting. And try not to let fear of judgment or kind of your comparison to other people get in the way of the vision that you have and where you want to go, because I think it can often block our own progress and we kind of get stuck trying to find a style or trying to achieve something that other people are doing. Whereas actually, if you let yourself create the things that you want to create, your own path will be forged and things will start happening that you didn't even think could happen. So that's my main thing for anyone. Just keep creating, keep putting stuff out there, and you'll find your way as it comes.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. I think that's a wonderful tip, to be honest. Okay, that's fantastic. So my first question is, how did photography happen for you? How did you come to where you are, that you're a photographer right now?
It's a good question because it's definitely not a conventional path for me. I think a lot of people, I think I'm similar in that sense to a lot of people, that many people nowadays don't have like a formal training in photography, and that wasn't the case for me either. I come from a very academic background, but photography has always been part of my life because my dad and my mum both always had cameras when we were kids. So whenever we'd go on family holidays, they always took the camera with them. And they're not photographers either. They will always kind of laugh and say that, they just like taking pictures and making memories, which is something that I always really valued. And that kind of came with me into my teenage years and into adulthood. I was always the person in the group of friends to have the camera and be taking pictures on nights out or wanting to take pictures on holidays and things like that. But being a photographer was definitely not something I ever thought I could do. I just assumed that was a job for cool people and I'm not a cool person. So like it just didn't fit with how I saw my life. But I always kept photography kind of in my life, just doing it at university and on holiday and with my friends. And the transition into making it part of my career really came when I quit my job to travel, because I really just wanted to go out and explore the world and see different things. I didn't want to be stuck in a 9 to 5 anymore. And after traveling for just a few weeks, I met my current partner, Caleb, and he is someone who has a very different background, very different life story to me. And he definitely believes in following your dreams and that you can do whatever you want with your life. And so I remember him asking me, like, what do you want to do? What could you do? And I always sat down. I remember we were in Malaysia specifically in a tree house on this like amazing eco bamboo resort. And I sat down and I thought, I just don't want to work in an office anymore. Like, it's Tuesday and I'm sitting here with this amazing view. And why can't this be my life every day? What could I do to create this kind of lifestyle for myself where I have more chances to live like this rather than being in an office? And I thought, well, I really like photography. And I really like food, but I don't want to be a chef. I don't want to kind of work in a kitchen, but I wonder if I could somehow combine food and photography. And so I went onto Google and typed in food photography, and I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is actually a job. And so I basically just started teaching myself like how to do food photography with my camera whilst traveling. So not very seriously in the beginning because traveling was a priority, but I started kind of learning how to use my camera on manual mode and understanding how light works. And then basically when the pandemic hit and we stopped traveling, that was when I thought, okay, now I can actually sit down, do some courses and really refine the technical and creative skills specifically of food photography. And that was obviously in 2020 with the pandemic. And basically from then until now is when I've been building up my business and becoming a full-time professional food photographer, and also kind of other types of photography that I'm sure we'll talk about later, but primarily food photography the last 4 years.
That's really interesting. You know, you planned it, you pre-planned it, you thought you want to be a food photographer. A lot of us photographers don't plan it. It just happens, it evolves, it usually comes to an opportunity that, okay, somebody's asking you to do something and then you get into it and you get better and better. So I find that very interesting that you actually combine these two things and you premeditated, like you made it a thing to follow. So that's pretty impressive, and I think that's fantastic. So
thank you.
I'm just curious, what field were you in before?
So I studied psychology at my undergrad and then neuroscience to a master's level, specifically neuroscience with language. I've always found language really fascinating, and it's probably why while I was traveling I started teaching English as a foreign language online, like to kind of fund my travels on the side. And I worked in like a science and tech company for a few years, which was really interesting, and I find it's still a really interesting company. It just, after a few years, I just couldn't see a way forward, and I didn't know what would change, and like I couldn't see the career path that I wanted to take, and it just didn't seem interesting to me to be in an office all day every day when I had so many other interests and passions. So whilst I still love neuroscience, I still like psychology and the brain and language, I just wanted to go down a different path in terms of my lifestyle. Yeah.
Excellent. So that could be kind of your hobby now. Usually photography is the hobby and that's the day job, but it could be kind of reversed. I find that pretty fascinating. Okay, so my next question would be what type of photography you do, but I'm sure everybody's figured out that you're a food photographer. So let's jump straight to how it is being a food photographer. How do you compare it to other type of photographies in your mind? Is there anything else you would consider when it comes to photography, or is food photography is it satisfying your soul completely? Is this the thing that you see yourself doing in the next 5-10 years? Like, how's a food photographer's life right now? Like, how is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know many people who absolutely love just food photography and that's what they do, and I think that's fantastic. I really love food photography as well, but I definitely have found in the last couple of years a craving to kind of do other things. I started feeling quite restricted by like the four walls of my backdrop essentially, and being able to kind of only compose within a backdrop, because food photography is very still life focused. You know, we have the time to compose an image and create something out of nothing, which is really exciting and really fun because you have some kind of vision in your mind and you basically create a story out of nothing in just maybe a few minutes or in an hour. And there's a lot of technical things and creative things to be learned. It's not an easy craft. My partner, for example, is also a photographer and filmmaker, and he just finds food photography really, really challenging and really difficult. And to me, it comes very naturally. So, and I really enjoy it. And it's something that I do see myself doing, like into the future. I love working with restaurants in particular, so I will definitely keep doing restaurant and cafe photography into the future. But in the last couple of years, I've really found myself looking for other kinds of photography to do. And so this year, just this month, the reason why I've been so busy is because I've actually had a new client, which is in hospitality. So I'm actually going and shooting hotels, and not just the F&B outlets, but also the rooms, the suites, the destination content of the city that they're based in, and using models, even dogs, because they have like perks for people who bring their dogs and they have like special dog stays. So the things I'm shooting nowadays are much more varied than what I was doing when I first started food photography. So yeah, I don't know where it's going to take me in the next few years. Food photography will always be part of what I do, and it's at the moment the core part of my business in terms of the types of clients I work with. But I definitely see that evolving and changing as well in the next couple of years. So as I mentioned, my partner is also a photographer and filmmaker. So we are kind of going as a team to all of the properties that belong to this particular hotel group. They are kind of mostly based in Italy, also in Germany, the UK, and in Belgium. And we've been commissioned basically to go to each of the properties and create social media content for them. So it's a very broad scope of work that we do for them. We kind of work with each team regionally and on site, and we get to capture and create lots of different stories of the things that they offer there, from the food and drinks outlets to the experiences to the suites and the rooms. And it's really, really exciting because we just are meeting so many people and expanding our portfolios and just working with a very different type of client. So, and we get to travel, which is also amazing. We both met through traveling and we love to travel together. So this is a bit of a dream come true for us, really, to be able to kind of get paid to travel and create work for people. It's really cool.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So your husband's involved in this, huh? He's handling the video, perhaps? Or are you also delving a bit into...
Yeah, so he does most of the video content. I can do some video, but not as confidently as he can. So I tend to be like his model from the back. So normally we'll do like over the shoulder shots, or me being kind of walking through somewhere, and he'll do video like that. And then I'm responsible for almost all of the imagery, the stills.
That's really interesting. That actually brings me to my next curiosity. What type of gear do you use? Since you do a bit of video, perhaps, maybe, but for your food photography and stuff, what do you have?
Yeah, good question. So I recently switched to Sony. So I used to be a Canon user, and I still love Canon. I think Canon is fantastic, much like Nikon and all the big players out there. But I switched to Sony at the end of last year because my camera needed an upgrade. I was using a crop sensor camera for a good few years, and I just needed to change. And because my partner had just switched to Sony as well, because of the video quality of the cameras and how small and light and compact they are, which is also great for traveling, I thought, well, maybe I should switch to Sony. Not just because I think it's better in terms of quality or anything like that, but mainly because we can share equipment. So it made it cheaper, more cost effective for us as a team.
It's very smart.
So we now have, two or three, we actually have three in total Sony camera bodies, and we share the lenses between us, which is really great. So I typically shoot with a 24-70mm lens. If he's using that, and I have a 90mm and a 50mm as well, prime lenses as a backup for food and product. And then we also have a 16-35 lens, and also a 70-200 with a 2x converter. So we have a huge range of like lenses that give us a nice focal length range as well for all the different things that we shoot. I also have a tripod, of course. I think that's key for food photography and still life and kind of lifestyle things. You need a tripod, especially one that has an overhead arm for those flat lays that everybody loves and that do really well on Instagram. So tripod's really important. And in terms of lighting, I always say that I love natural light the most. I built my business using just natural light. For a long time, I didn't have any artificial lighting. And so I really learned how to use natural light for product photography, for restaurants, for cafes, everything I did at home. But then I started using a flash last year because someone loaned me some flash lights, and I thought, well, I may as well practice using them. And of course they came in really handy for product photography in the dark, short winter days that we have in the UK. So I kind of started seeing the benefits of using artificial light. And now we have switched to continuous lights because they're also great for video. So rather than having all this different equipment, we've kind of streamlined our gear so that we can share equipment and we have what works for all the types of work that we do. So now we have some very small, compact and lightweight, but very powerful continuous lights. I can't remember the name of them right now, but I will send you the link for the description in case anybody's interested in them, because they are incredibly powerful and they are so good for what we do in terms of travel. And I'm really impressed with how powerful they are because they're literally like this big. They're tiny, but they're so good. And I used them yesterday for my product shoot with a big softbox on them, and they were fantastic. So yeah, my preference is natural light, but I definitely see the value of artificial light as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah. What lens do you usually gravitate towards more if you have like food on the table and
It depends what it is. I would say the 24-70 is the easiest because it's the most versatile, so I can do a wide shot as well as get close up. but my 90mm that I got recently is probably one of my favorites now, and especially I've been shooting a lot of chocolate and truffles lately, and so getting really up close and doing the macro shots of those, the 90 just is amazing. It's so good.
Insta. Yeah,
yes, exactly, they're brilliant. So yeah, either 24-70 or the 90 at the moment.
Yeah, 90 is interesting. In Canon, the 90 is a TSC. It's a tilt shift lens, and that's used a lot in food and product. I don't think the Sony one is a TSC, a tilt shift, but very sharp in the Canon side.
No.
So I'm a Canon user too. That's really cool. That's really interesting.
Good. Nice.
So do you tether, by the way, whenever you shoot?
I do. For product and lifestyle, yes. Especially when I'm shooting at home, it just makes the whole workflow so much easier. It's definitely something that when I discovered it and started doing it, it completely changed the level and quality of my work. So I do recommend tethering for that kind of still life, product lifestyle stuff. It's really, really great.
Absolutely. Is it Capture One?
When I do restaurant photography, it varies. I use Lightroom, but because I use Sony, I think recently, actually, they did say that they have a tool now for being able to connect their software called Imaging Edge, where you do the live view and remote shooting. You can connect that to Lightroom. I haven't tried it yet, but their software I find very easy to use and it works really well for me. So I'm happy with the setup I have with Imaging Edge, and then importing it and editing in Lightroom. That works really well. But for restaurants, I typically just shoot kind of onto the camera because I often shoot during service and I haven't got space to also put my laptop and have cables running across where guests or customers might like trip over them and things like that. So unless the restaurant is closed and I'm working, in a very quiet environment, then I will tether. But otherwise, I don't shoot tethered for restaurants. It's just not possible in the ones I've worked with.
Yeah. Do you use a food stylist or do you do food styling yourself?
Good question as well. I would love to have a food stylist, but I don't. Everything, unless it's been shot at a restaurant, everything that you see on my feed has been styled by me, unless it's clearly restaurant photography. And then, of course, the chefs have plated the work. So, yeah, it's, I guess, again, it's something that when I realised that I wanted to do food photography, it's just something that came very naturally to me. And I just really enjoy plating things. I realised that growing up, I love hosting people and I love like making the table look nice at Christmas. And I always really enjoy doing that kind of thing and making it look aesthetically pleasing. And so for me, food styling, I wouldn't say I'm the best food stylist. I know other people who are really, really good at it, but I can do it enough to create a good portfolio and shoot at home. But I really love going to restaurants where the chef just plates this food fantastically and they bring it out and you're like, oh, I don't need to do anything. This is great, thank you. And I've been very fortunate that all my restaurant clients to date have been very good at plating, so I'm happy about that. But it's always a question I ask for restaurant photography. When I have a discovery call with a client, I do check and say, are you happy with the way that your chefs plate the food, or are you looking for me or someone to style it for the photography? Because it's always something that we need to consider, like, the plates need to look good. And so if I'm focusing on photography and if the client says that they would want us to style the plates, then I would probably get a food stylist in to help me for that.
Yeah, and I presume you also do the art direction yourself. The background, you'll take something with you, the colors and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So obviously in the process of preparing the project, then we ask the client all these questions, we prepare a mood board and really get a feel for the colours and things that they want and the props to use. And I have actually basically I've created a document where I've listed all the backdrops that I have, like what they look like on the website versus what they look like within a reference image that I've shot on the backdrop with, so they can see what it looks like actually in use, as well as like photos of the props that I have and that kind of thing. So often I'll send that to a client so that they at least can pick, what kind of things they like more. But I have also clients that say, we trust your direction and you kind of go with it. The only things that we don't want you to use are these, but please go ahead and do what you feel. So that's really nice to have that flexibility and that freedom to just be trusted to create. It's really, really nice. It's good fun.
Yeah. People don't realize how important art direction is, especially when you're talking about food and product. I also teach photography. I've been doing that for maybe like 2 years. And I tell all my students that if you get art direction right, you've done more than half your job. So people think when you're entering photography, it's about the camera, it's about the lens, the light. I tell them light's the most important thing. But honestly, art direction, I give so much importance to. Without that, whether it's fashion, whether it's anything, it's all about the colors and the background, the foreground, what you're showing. So especially in food, that's really cool that you do that as well. I mean, I went through your Insta, of course, and I loved it. That's one reason why I contacted you. I think you're really talented.
Oh, thank you.
You have a natural flair for it.
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally believe that.
Yes.
So, okay, so what I caught on from your Instagram is that you're getting a bit into wildlife photography, perhaps. What's that about? How's that going?
Yes.
If you don't mind me intruding.
Again, is just, something that I've... No, of course not. No, go ahead and ask. It's something I'm very happy to talk about, and I haven't talked about it all that much because it's something, a bit like I said right at the beginning, like one of my tips about breaking through the fear of judgment or fear of doing things. For me, wildlife and nature and looking after the planet has been something that I've been really interested in and very passionate about growing up. Like I always grew up watching David Attenborough programs and being fascinated by landscapes and animals and wildlife, and I feel very passionate about what is happening to the planet and preserving it and doing what we can to look after it. But again, I would look at these programs and think, the people who are shooting and capturing these stories, it's not something I can do. Like, I'm not a photographer. I'm not cool enough to go out there and be in Africa photographing animals like this. But recently, obviously, I looked back at my recent journey and realised how far I've come from not being a photographer at all to building a full-time business and doing really well with it. And I thought, you know what is my ultimate dream? Like, what is my dream job? Of course, I love photographing food. And like I said, that's something that won't change. But ultimately, I would love to be the one out there shooting animals and capturing and telling stories about how they live and telling the world why it's so important that we should look after them and think about how we live on this planet to enable them to continue living as well. And so, that's part of my journey this year, to start building a portfolio in wildlife photography and especially wildlife and conservation. So it's a whole different world to photographing food. Of course, food is still life. It doesn't move. You control everything that's in front of the lens, and wildlife is just the opposite of that. So I have a lot to learn. And that's why I went on this puffin photography workshop with Canon. Canon UK kind of set that up. And that was my first little foray into wildlife photography with professionals. So obviously, of course, I've kind of tried to shoot wildlife out on my own on holiday and things like that. But this is really where I'm
Did they know you switched to Sony?
I'm doing this with a view to build a portfolio and see. They did. Yeah, they did know that. Yeah.
That's so funny.
They don't mind. They're still there to help. Yes. They're always there to help. And so now I haven't actually told anyone in my own audience this yet, but I've booked myself onto a month-long project of wildlife photography and conservation in South Africa in September. So I will be going away for a month to start building my portfolio for African wildlife, which I am so excited about. I can't wait to go. That's what's coming up.
That's amazing. That sounds so interesting, and that sounds so much fun. If I was to pinpoint where I ever wanted to become a photographer, it was because of National Geographic when I was a kid, and it was wildlife photography. That's what I thought, that if I became a photographer, I'd do that. I'd make either photography or documentaries, videos. So I can kind of relate to your excitement there. But the prospect of roughing it out for so long, I don't know if I'm okay with that, but because that's mandatory. But I don't know. Could happen. I know it's exciting
that's
to travel
always something that I've always thought with wildlife and nature. You have to sit there for hours and hours waiting for something to happen. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to give it a try. And I have a couple of good friends who are wildlife photographers, and I've heard their stories, and I'm like, I don't know if I can, but I have to try it before I make any decisions. So I'm going to give it a go.
Absolutely. One more question regarding food photography. Do you think financially, as a business, food photography is a good genre to pick compared to the rest? Does it have a good market, especially where you are?
I think so. I think it's not an easy market, but I don't think anything that you do freelance is easy. I think globally as well, economy is changing, and people generally the world over, people and businesses are struggling financially, and so everywhere it feels like, at least stories I'm hearing from different continents as well, businesses are kind of tying up their purse strings and not wanting to pay as much as we would like them to. but I am still being able to build a full-time business. And I think the most important thing you can do is to diversify your income streams and be open-minded about how you can make an income with the skill set that you have, whether that's adding on learning how to do video, whether that's doing more editing and offering editing services for other people, whether that's expanding your skill set and working in different kind of fields of photography. But food, definitely, there is a lot you can do in food photography. You can do products, you can do restaurants, you can go out and also create, like, be almost like an influencer and create content for social media. There's a lot of things you can do. You can be an educator. I also do have a coaching business as well. So I have an online course. I also do personalized one-to-one coaching for people who want to build businesses in food photography. So I think it's about being open to understanding what it is that is possible and just trying new things and not relying on only doing just photography for one type of client. It's kind of the key takeaway for me, I think. At least it's what I've learned over the years.
How does it compare to coaching? Do you like coaching? Do you like teaching when compared to actually doing the work, meaning being a photographer? How do they compare?
Yeah, I do like teaching. Yeah, I think it's really fun. It's very rewarding. I think teaching, again, was actually something that at one point when everyone's deciding, what am I going to do with my life? Teaching was something that I considered. I quite like learning and helping other people understand things. And I remember when I was doing my postgraduate master's degree, we were doing like study groups and people would always say how well I explain things and I'd be a good teacher. And obviously I taught English as a foreign language for 5 or 6 years and really enjoyed doing that. And so when I realized that I could start teaching and sharing what I was learning about food photography, that people really enjoyed the way that I was teaching that to them and kind of explaining things. And so it kind of grew from doing things through newsletters and sharing stuff on Instagram to building an online course around the creative side of food photography. That's like a video course that I offer, to actually, now that I have a lot more experience in business and working with clients and getting that set up very professionally, now I do that one-to-one kind of, I have a coaching program for people who want to either start or grow or scale their businesses. And I think it's amazing. I love receiving messages from my coaching clients telling me that they've achieved something, or that something's happened that they didn't think they could do. They've overcome some limiting beliefs. They've increased their rates. So it's really fascinating to see those messages come through, and I feel so proud of what they're doing, and it's definitely something that is a core part of my business that I will keep doing as well. And it's great because it means I can travel and do it too. So even if I don't have any photography like clients, then I want to go traveling for a couple of months and I take that with me. For example, my partner is from Argentina, so I know at Christmas we'll go to Argentina for 2 or 3 months, and I don't have to worry necessarily about finding photography clients. I can do my coaching as well and kind of take my clients with me, as it were, and teach them from afar, which is just amazing to have that flexibility.
That sounds amazing. My question would be, how do you set up something like that? Do you use social media, or do you advertise, or is it just through word of mouth? How is that expanded for you?
Yeah, so I actually joined a coaching program to help me build my coaching program last year, so about roughly a year ago, and it was focused on selling through Instagram. So initially I learned how to create a social media strategy and create content that would position me as an educator and as an authority, as someone who can teach food photography business. And so basically I am selling mostly through Instagram, and now it's also through word of mouth and through my email list and things like that. But a lot of it, 99% at the moment, is selling through Instagram, which is why I'm usually so active there. The last 6 weeks has not been a true reflection of how active I normally am on Instagram. But yeah, usually I'm active there, and that's how I basically sell my coaching program.
That's fantastic. That's a really good learning. I'm sure people will enjoy that tip. And coming to tips, what's your biggest tip for aspiring food photographers?
Again, I would say this is for photographers in general rather than food photographers. And it's about not waiting for things to happen to you, but to create opportunities for yourself. And I've learned this over the years. Like in the beginning, you feel like you're kind of waiting for these inquiries to come in, or you think that things should happen because everyone else seems to have things happening to them. But it's more important to link to the first tip, was to keep creating and to create opportunities for yourself. Do personal projects, network with other creatives, other professionals, and suggest to do things together. keep learning, attend workshops, share your work as much as you can, and keep doing things and putting stuff out into the world, because that's how you create opportunities and start conversations and create a business, basically. So yeah, I would say that's my biggest tip, just to keep creating opportunities for yourself and don't expect them to land in your lap, because they probably won't.
I think that's an excellent tip. It's very deep. It's very real. So I'll totally reinforce that and say I that's what I tell people as well. You got to keep creating. You have to build a portfolio. That's why people hire you. You have to make work and you have to get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely creating opportunities is a great thing to say. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. So Linda, I think that covers most of the questions I had, and it was
Amazing.
a fantastic.
Thank you.
It was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad we could do it. I really appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedule to do this. Maybe we'll have you on again if you ever have time in a couple of months or next year or something. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely.
But
Very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I'm someone who really likes to share, and I'm very transparent with what I'm doing and yeah, my knowledge and my experiences. So you're always welcome to ask me, and I'll be happy to come back.
Fantastic. That's so kind of you. Great talking to you. Till next time, perhaps.
You too.
Okay, take care. See you.
Yes. Thanks very much. See you. Bye.